Greetings everyone, welcome to Zimbabwe Daily on our program Behind the Microphone. I am Patie Mashiri, and today we just want to say compliments of the new season, and today we have a very special guest in the house, and I'll just let him introduce himself. Welcome.
Thanks, Patie. Compliments of the new year to you and to all your viewers. My name is Job Ngarivhume, leader of Transform Zimbabwe. Sure.
Yeah, people would want to know who is Jacob. People would want to know, are you married? Do you have a family? What other things do you do?
Yes, I am married. We together with Nyasha, my wife, we have 3 children, 2 daughters and a son. I'm a researcher by profession. I studied mathematics at the university.
Wow.
Yeah, that's my professional work. That's what I do. I do research.
Maybe before we get into the conversation, how are you?
I'm good, as you can see probably. That I'm well, yeah, you know, after spending so much months in prison, yeah, you feel that, you know, God has been gracious that you come back in one piece. But of course, sometimes, you know, you look so good and beautiful, but internally you still are going through what you went through.
So let's talk about the prison experience. How was it for you?
It was bad. Prison comes as bad as it is. Our prisons are quite some bad dungeons and bad places to be. First and foremost, you know, you are locked up for 17 hours a day and in a very small and limited space. And for those 17 hours, you know, you are in a place that has got no toilet. So you have to use the toilet after 17 hours. Yeah, so that is not easy, and then you have to get used to that. And it's also not very easy, yeah. So that was bad enough. And of course the food is pretty bad. You know, I saw people suffering from a disease called pellagra, which is a result of the deficiency of protein and fat in the body. So the body eats the skin. So I saw people's skin peeling off in chunks. Because of that disease, which was very bad. So yeah, and of course to go through the routines, the prison routines every day, it's horrible. It's horrible, yeah.
Yeah. When you're talking about such an experience, and then few months later they release you, how do you feel?
I mean, you I don't know whether angry is the right word, because, you know, I never was angry. But, you know, you are disheartened, deeply disappointed. In the first place, there was no evidence that was used to convict me by the magistrate who convicted me, one Feresi or Feresu Chakanyuka. She listened to no evidence because she got no evidence from anybody. You know, the charge sheet... You know, my charge sheet was under a separate Twitter account, which then they went on to convict me under another account, which was quite bizarre and fatal. But they didn't care. So to her, it was not about evidence, but it was about carrying out a specific order to convict me. And she did so gladly. And I was also disappointed that she carried her emotion with her to my conviction. She was so angry, she was bitter. I mean, she was unlike a typical Zimbabwean that I'm used to. To see somebody there just angry with you for no reason, just to, you know, and more so, you know, generally when you talk of women, they are very good, caring people, loving, and even if they are hard on you, the mother's love comes even with a smile sometimes. But none of that from her on that day. She was angry, bitter, and at the end she convicted me for 4 years, which was even a bigger shocker than the conviction itself, to say, okay, fine, you can convict me. I was hoping maybe for a suspended sentence or something, but then she sends me to prison for 4 years. I mean, I was totally caught off the foot.
So what does that tell you about the justice system in Zimbabwe?
It is captured, my sister. I have been a victim. I may not want to use that word, but I tell you, I have been a recipient of a captured judiciary in this country. I've been a recipient of a justice system that I mean, I was saying to myself, did this honorable woman ever read law? But I also understood that maybe she was not responsible for what she was doing and for the decision. Apart from her emotion, her anger at me and so on, she probably was taking orders from somebody. And those who are responsible for giving out those orders, I mean, honey, so it quimally pens, shame to them. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable for people to give such orders against a citizen who has committed no crime. And at the end of 8 months, you say, okay, fine, you committed no crime, go bail, go home. That's gullible.
Very sad.
Very sad.
Let's talk about, when you're talking about the justice system, so do they then compensate someone when you spend a lot of that time for nothing in jail? Do they compensate you?
We will sue them. We will definitely. I discussed with my legal team of Professor Lavmoma Duku and Moses Ngomo that we will sue them. But you see, our challenge in this country is that they don't respect our laws. In more civilized nations, I've lived abroad in different countries. I've also lived in the US, for instance. They take a lot of time to investigate a person and then arrest. They investigate, then arrest. But here in Zimbabwe, they arrest, then investigate, which is completely the opposite. And if you were to charge somebody in a normal country, and then they are acquitted at the end, they are not even convicted, you are sued for that. And you pay. And you pay big time. But here, there's no prize for abrogation. They sometimes don't even give a damn. They don't care because they don't respect the laws, which is very unfortunate. And that's the core of what we stand for. We fight for justice in this country because justice must be saved properly in a country, which you don't have. So, I mean, even if before we sue them, you should know that if you keep somebody in jail for 8 months and then they are acquitted eventually, you are liable for stealing away 8 months of my time. I mean, imagine what was happening to my family, to my businesses, life has been lost, seated in dirty places without a toilet. And you don't walk away as if nothing happened.
Yeah, very true.
Exactly.
Yeah. Let's talk about a support system. You talked about your family. When you were in jail, how was it for you?
Yes, for me, being leader of a political party and also being fairly known to many Zimbabweans, exactly. So life was a lot better. I had several support systems that were around me. And first and foremost, of course, was my family and my wife in particular. Of the 8 months that I was in prison, she came to prison virtually every day, except only days that she was either out of the country on business or she was doing something critical like taking the children to school. So you would see her daily. I saw her almost every day. So in other words, I was virtually imprisoned with her. So that was key in terms of support system. And she also brought food for me every day. Yeah, that probably explains why I still kept part of my... So she would bring food every day. And then also lots of support from my colleagues. My family members, they were supporting me, supporting my family also, my brothers, my sisters. And then also our Transform Zimbabwe family, they were coming to be with me. Many pastors, former students from the University of Zimbabwe, the Christian Union, colleagues, lawyers. I had lawyers visiting every other day. They would come to express support. I got a lot of solidarity. Many people managed to come through.
Hashtags on Twitter.
Exactly. I was not accessing those facilities, but at least they could tell me that things are happening. The hashtags were coming. The hugs and kisses were sent to me via different people who were coming to see me, and of course that was very critical for me.
How was the feeling when you get released and your wife was there with your family? We could see people celebrating. How was it?
It was so good. You would almost think you are dreaming. Because now prison, and remember I went to that final court session against a background of George Sharamba having vowed that I was not going to be released for Christmas. So it said I was not going to be with family. And I mean, I don't know why, but I actually believed him that I was not going to be released. And so when I realized that the case was really going against the state, because there was no state case in the first place, then it was quite, wow, so I'm going to be home. But remember, after I was acquitted, or, you know, after the appeal was upheld, I had to wait again for 2 days before the prison could release me. Their paperwork was not in order, but it was a huge relief at least to be out, to be able to see my wife, to be able to see my children, and also my colleagues and everybody who has been supporting me. It was so good. But of course, you always know, the guys I was living with in prison, they cried. You know, it's part of what really hurt me so much. They'd become used to me, family, and, you know, I would also support them a lot in terms of food and other things. And now when I was leaving, everybody was crying, and it was not quite good for me. And, you know, to think that people are crying that you stayed exactly to see that, you know, and you can't stay behind, because I mean, you can't stay there, this is prison. But it was actually quite bad. It was, but anyway, it was good that I was out.
And we are glad that you are out.
Thank you very much.
Let's talk about the elections. They happened when you were still in. What do you think about what's happening right now, the outcome of the elections in Zimbabwe?
I mean, the election, unfortunately, was one of those sham elections this regime always holds. And I mean, what really pained me most was when I heard the news that they did not deliver ballot papers in time. The Glenview, Budiro, Glenora, the ballots were delivered 10 p.m.
Yet in Zimb,
exactly. And to imagine how does that happen? And I actually thought at one time, you know what I thought, my sister? I said, maybe it's good that I'm inside, because I would not have stood it. I mean, I, for one, Jacob Ngarivhume, would not have the guts to contemplate and accept that they can fail to have ballots in Glenora whilst they've delivered some ballots in Binga and Uzumba. I mean, I would not have taken that lightly. I probably would have revolted. Honestly, I mean, I would not. But thank God, there was nothing I could do. I was locked away. And but again, you look at that and what FAZ was doing, you know, setting up bases right within polling stations, intimidating people in the 21st century, my sister.
I was also one person who was also intimidated by FAZ, because I covered the election in the Marsh East region to Zumba. Then I had to rush back because things were not well.
Exactly. And then to see them, that they are setting up bases at polling stations, and I mean, and then call it an elections when there are observers and so on. I mean, in this year and era, it's unacceptable. To me, it's unacceptable. I mean, I actually feel this is not what you want to do as a nation, and we are still far from the ethos of democracy, and we need to do more. It actually was saying to me, we need to do more.
True. Let's look at the regional boards, Sadc or election boards in the region. Do you think they are doing enough in terms of the case of Zimbabwe?
No. You see, Sadc, I sometimes think what has bewitched us as Africans and as a people. I mean, Africans are good people. Solidarity, we love one another, we express love. But to see what Sadc is doing, I mean, it pains me. It gets to me to say, you know, these are brothers and sisters who have gone through their struggles and we have supported each other. But in Zimbabwe, when it comes to Zimbabwe, they turn a blind eye on what the ZANU-PF regime is doing. I mean, as a result, you look at South Africa, they are keeping millions of Zimbabweans there because they can't stay anymore here in this country because of how it has been run down and ruined. And then to think, why can't, as Africans, at least stand for the truth? I mean, you see, if you see that I'm not doing certain things right, it's not love not to speak to me about it and openly discussing it. That's no love. There's no love like that. You got to express it and put it across to say, this is not right. Exactly. But Sadc is not doing that. At the end, they become a band of witches and wizards who say, okay, fine, how much have you gathered? How much limbs and bones and torsos have you got so that we can share? I mean, we can't be there in this year and era. We need to support each other in truth. I mean, you can't call what happened in this country an election. That's far from a proper election, and Sadc needs to have spoken out. They did in the initial report, but they afterwards they do nothing, and that's unacceptable.
Yeah, when you talk about the elections, we then, like right now we are experiencing the same thing where there is a person who is recalling candidates. And we are talking about 6 million that was used in the last by-election in December. We are talking about maybe 7 million this time in February. And we are also looking at the economy in Zimbabwe. Right now, bread is now at $1.20. What do you think? Do you think a person, an individual, should have that power to recall someone who was voted by the residents?
Never. I mean, you see, probably what is happening in this country, it has never happened anywhere. I mean, I was trying to recall and check my history. Exactly. I mean, who bewitched us? You see, so you look at that and you realize it's crazy. And you only find that in oligarchy states, in criminal states, in states that have got no respect for people's opinion. We're coming out of an election. Then they set up an imposter. A sheer imposter without backbone, without nothing, except nothing. And then they go up, recall people, and then they go for elections. They murder people during the process of those by-elections, and then they use more money.
Nothing is done.
Exactly.
Jacob gets arrested for nothing.
Exactly.
But the person who murders someone is left.
Exactly. It's free. Nobody has been arrested for the Mavuku murder. You see, so that, you look at it. And I was actually thinking yesterday, I was actually reflecting. I sometimes sit back and reflect deeply. I was saying, if we think of people who have sold out Zimbabwe, who have sold their souls to the devil and sold out this nation, you think of people who sold out civilians in the Zanla bases like Nyati. There was a guy called Nyati during the liberation struggle who sold out people in Nyazonia and Chimoyo, resulting in thousands of people being killed. And then I was saying to myself, if you think of the Nyatis and others, this imposter they've created recently would actually fit those proportions. I mean, Shabang could fit in those proportions of people who have given no conscience. They've killed their conscience in order to attain certain things, made to get a few dollars. And ZANU-PF uses you like a condom. When they are done with you, they throw you in the bin, and no one will ever know who you are. So, and to think that an individual would sit back and say, fine, you can use me, I'm here, it's crazy.
Very true. And you know what really got me is when we were covering the elections, there were like elderly women sleeping at those polling stations waiting to vote, and they voted the next day in the morning, and then someone comes and say you no longer have that councillor or that MP.
Exactly.
But so for those who have just joined us, this is Zimbabwe Daily on our program Behind the Mic, and today we have Jacob Ngarivhume in the house to share his story, the challenges, and also what he thinks about the future of Zimbabwe. Maybe let's get to talk about in terms of budget. You know them too, big guy. In terms of budget, we are thinking about, recently we were talking with Pastor Yvonne, and we were saying they were coming from Mutare for their holiday, and you are thinking you need $24 for the tour gates, and you also need $80 for fuel. You need to pay fees for your kids, you need to pay rentals, you need to make sure that everything is in order. What do you think about the budget process?
I mean, we are becoming more and more a dark country. You see, you are talking of them coming from Mutare. I also took my children to Mutare, where they go to school. And I needed as much of those toll gates. But, as I was driving to Mutare, what really got to me was the fact that, Mutare houses the diamond fields in this country. The diamonds that we have and the revenue we get from the diamonds, which we now know is not part of the central budget, that, not much of the revenue goes to the central budget, because this is what ZANU-PF diverts to use for the big vehicles that they buy for everybody, for themselves, for the campaign, and they pay off these guys who are murdering innocent Zimbabweans. The money they use for that. And then now the money doesn't get to the treasury. But if you look at how much endowed we are as a nation, you would cry and say, God, what has gotten to us? I mean, the diamonds we have are sufficient to cover us. We've got the platinum. Remember, we've got the gold. Now uranium, the oil, the gas, you name it. I was reading a book when I was in prison. I remember, by the way, I read nearly 100 books for the 8 months. I mean, I really got my time. I used my time for reading. And one of the books was actually, identifying that it was actually showing that we have nearly 100 minerals in this country, different minerals. Some are still to be explored and used. And then what gets us to where we are? Why would Mutuli Ncube, instead of accessing those resources, why would he go back to the very people who are facing the hardships, and then it's like milking blood from the same cow? And then you come back to us, you overtakes the poor person who can't even raise the fees. Fuel, we've got the most expensive fuel in Southern Africa. And so how does he sit down and say, I've increased passport fees, I've increased the toll gate, has doubled, everything, taxes and everything? That is crazy. Somebody needs to stand up and speak up. That's why they take us to prison. Because, I can't stand that. We need to do something and say, no. We have enough resources that can... No, I think we probably are the only country in the world that, our hardworking mothers, wives, women who go abroad to buy stuff, bring it back. I've visited countries like Israel countless times. They would never stop you at the border, at the airport control, and ask, what have you got in that bag? And please, you have to pay duty for it. Clothes. A country that survives on, at one time I had to take my undergarments. I bought myself some mini briefs and so on. I was stopped at the airport, and then they were pulling them out, and I was lifting them to show them. They wanted tax for mini briefs. Crazy. What kind of a nation is that? Which nation, when you have been blessed with so much diamond, you go and search people's bags and take their pens and demand for tax and duty? You can't be a country that lives on duty from the poor. Meanwhile, Henrietta Shoa takes away 6 kg of gold through the same airport. And then she's acquitted of any crime and so on. These are
because
crazy.
She's somehow, connected.
It's crazy. It's crazy.
So do you think in Zimbabwe, if we could have good governance, we have enough resources to cater
Absolutely.
for?
We have what it takes to develop. If we have good governance, corruption is kept. Look at it. $1 million invested in any of our hospitals, our health system will be proper, fair and fine. But not even a single brain thinks of doing that. All they are concerned of is amalgamating power, looting, stealing. They're crazy people. They're crazy people, my sister.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, maybe let's talk about Transform Zimbabwe, because I know that in the last election you have said you were going to support any opposition candidate who was stronger. So let's talk about the brains behind Transform Zimbabwe.
So when we were in prison, then a decision was reached. The team reached a decision. The executive of Transform Zimbabwe sat down and said, okay, fine, let's go with the strong candidates and so on. When I was in prison, and even before I went to prison, one of the things that I did is I sat down to reflect and say, what do we need to do and do differently as a people, and as the opposition specifically, so that we come up with we come up with a winning strategy, because we need to take power. That's what we need to do. And So one of the things that I've been reflecting on, and then we have been discussing even as leaders, is that I think we need even to go back to say we need to raise leaders who are bold and strong, who can face the challenge, number one. Then number two, we need to build a strategy that we can adhere to, that Zimbabweans are proud of and know it can win them power. And then number three, we need to coalesce and bring people together. We need to build a broad movement that is not articulated to an individual. Our struggle has been polluted by the fact that it has to be either patience struggle, it has to be either, you've won. I mean, we need a struggle that is owned by Zimbabweans, that Zimbabweans are prepared to die for, that Zimbabweans are prepared to go to jail for, that Zimbabweans are prepared to stand up for. And this is an initiative now we are pushing to say, let's bring as many people as we can together. Even the problem is we look for our friends to work with.
Yeah.
I will tell you something. One of the person that is not probably your best friend is your spouse in a family. Your spouse is very open half the time. She tells you the truth, or he tells you the truth if this is not right. But you build a family, you raise children together, and she raises her points to say this is not right. This is what we need. But sometimes in Zimbabwe, we are looking for people who kiss us, who love us. One of the books that I read when I was in prison is Abraham Lincoln. I read the bibliography of Abraham Lincoln. One unique thing about the man was he looked for his enemies and opponents to lead. Exactly. And those are people actually that can give you better ideas. But ourselves, isumanja tidaro, tungachaget bootlickers. Our politics is full of bootlickers, people that tell you are closer to God than anybody else. Nonsense. We don't need that. So this is what we are working on. Let's say, even if we have disagreed in the past, not of course to disagree to the point of people who sell their soul and sell the struggle. As long as you haven't sold the struggle, you haven't sold out, but we have differed, let's come together. Let's find each other. Let's build a formidable opposition. That when we say we are saying no, you see, one of the things we can't do as we approach 2028 is to go into 2028 with exactly the same conditions having not been addressed. If we are demanding for electoral reform, better start now so that we say we can't get into 2028 or there's no election unless there are sufficient reforms that can enable a free and fair and credible election. And if we are all combined and we do that, guess what? We can go into an election that we can win. And we should be able to defend that position. And that's what we are working on as Transform Zimbabwe.
Wow. Okay. So,
are you saying the opposition is not winning elections?
We haven't won power. I mean, for me, if we are winning election, we should win power. And we haven't done that. It's inexcusable, because we can't explain anything else if we haven't. If we are not in power, people are being taxed, people are suffering, and we are not in power. We haven't achieved anything. We can't even celebrate that we have stopped 2/3 majority. Now an imposter is sending people away. They are reclaiming that 2/3. So we need a strategy to respond. There are things that I really believe that they can't go under our watch as leaders. What is happening in this country? One day our children will say, you guys, where were you? Mamuri kupi dedi mamuri kwere zvinhu zvichiitika. So but I've recalled your councillor voted at 10 p.m. And then they put another one. And the loser becomes the member of parliament.
And what kind of leaders are we putting in parliament? Are they there to represent people or their own interests?
You see, and I think what ZANU-PF has done is they've destroyed our fabrics as a people and our conscience. And they've promoted this whole idea of self, that everything has to be about yourself. Look at Ed. He has been minister since 1980. He's one of the longest serving members of that government, of this present government. But he still has not had enough. He wants another term. 46 years now in power, you still want more. Is that glutton? What is that? You fail to understand it. But these guys, and they're so blind that, and this now is an attitude that is in everybody. Everyone, when they get to parliament, it's not even about representing people, it's about what benefits they get. We need to move away from that. We need to move away from a feeling and an idea and a responsibility of representing the people. And up until until we raise such leaders. If it is Jacob Ngarivhume who is not doing that, I must be accountable to the people. The people must say, Jacob, this is not right. No to this. I mean, you can't be above the law. You can't be above the people who elect you. We need to build that culture of a people that can reprimand their leaders, that can say, no, this is not right. Up until we get to that stage, we'll go up and around in circles, and that's unacceptable.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. Maybe when you were talking about prison, do you have a message for Job Siyabonga?
Yes, I would want to say to Job, my brother, you should be out soon. I mean, I honestly hope that when he next appears in
On the
24th, then he should be released. That's my hope. But of course, even if you are not released, stay strong like you have done. It's one of the things that I also did when I was in that prison. Initially, I was so hopeful that I'm going to be out. And the lawyers were telling me, you won't last for 4 days and so on. But I lasted 8 months.
Yeah.
8 months. You see, the 8 months, remember, it was a struggle for my appeal to be heard. It took 8 months for the paperwork to be filed and everything to be done. 8 months to get just a single appeal. And then I eventually got out. But of course, when I realized that I couldn't take myself out of prison, I said, kana kuno inorira kuno yekujeri iri yekuti indadzika kuruma. I mean, you got to just get used to that. You know, you remember, I then had gotten used to the stinking smell of human waste. I had to. I only sewage. And I had escaped the sewage, and then I was living in sewage in prison. Exactly. I mean, I got used. I could not eat my food. You know, somebody would have a running tummy. They're spoiling the corner. And then if you are too hungry, you got to eat. I had to get used to that. No. Ndakutotambiri kurira ndikati andidye for the next 17 hours ndozodya rini ndinobuda ndakati hobodo vakati auoni jeri rakamuwanda. So I mean, it has to. So I mean, to my brother, I would say, stay strong. You're fighting for a good cause, and you know, surely God will reward every good work that people do.
And that your message to the listeners, to everyone who follows you, to those who aspire to be like you know, your message. I
mean, my first message would be to Zimb daily cartoonists to say, wow, your cartoons are fabulous. Right. Of course, to the people of Zimbabwe, my message really is to say we need to stay strong. I mean, Zimbabwe is our heritage. One thing that I have no mistake or illusion about is to say Zimbabwe is our heritage. We have no other country except Zimbabwe. We can't run away from Zimbabwe forever. You see, we have to stand to defend Zimbabwe. If it takes us to go to Chikurubi Maximum, Harare Central, Wawa Maximum, wherever, for us to free Zimbabwe, so be it. I mean, we must be prepared to take up our fight to the nation. And Zimbabwe needs leaders that are committed. And you Zimbabweans, you can do it. Zimbabwe is a great nation, a great country that has been endowed by God with all the minerals. And also good people. Zimbabwe has got good people, well-learned, brainy, restrained. I mean, good people. We have got good citizens who have been messed up by a regime that doesn't want to give up power. They are doing everything at the expense of holding on to power. But we've got a good country. A far, far good country than they are building. So it is possible for us to build a country that we are proud of. And we need to deliver ourselves from evil. We need to deliver ourselves from the chains, the albatross around us. The economy is an albatross. Everything that ZANU-PF has created is an albatross around the people of Zimbabwe. And we need to shake ourselves off. And that process might be painful, but it has to be done. And victory one day, and surely it will come. But it takes our determination and our commitment to it. We got to be committed. I had a difficult conversation one of these days with my wife and children. I told them that, it's unfortunate that what I am doing, I can't stop. In as much as it has caused you so much pain. I mean, it has caused pain, I tell you.
Patriotic.
But of course, ZANU-PF will tell you. They will tell you, when I said no to corruption, they say, no Zimbabwean can ever say no to corruption unless it is you are incited by the West.
You see?
They actually believe that nobody can stand up to corruption except white people. What men of leaders are those?
Yeah,
And I tell you, Zimbabwe, it is possible for us to change the course. I am determined. I will be the last man standing. If everybody gives up, I will be the last man to leave this country. I will make sure that this country will be completely uninhabitable before I leave. I'll be the last person. I mean, ED would even leave before me. I mean, I will be here to defend our heritage until the very end.
Thank you so much for joining
Welcome.
us today. It's really good to see that you are okay as well. And please continue to be okay. Speak
Thank
to
you.
someone if
Thank
you feel
you.
like something is bad inside you. But I am glad that you also talk to your wife, so it's easier if you have someone to speak to. But yeah, we hope to see you again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone, for listening. And of course, he heard it from the horse's mouth. That was Jacob Ngarivhume today in our studio right here at Zimbabwe Daily. Until we meet again on our program Behind the Mic, from me, Patience, it's goodbye for now.